For years, Yemen's war has been fought on the ground, in the mountains, across deserts, and along shifting front lines. But now, something is changing. The battlefield is moving into the sky. Drones have become the new weapon of choice for Saudi-allied Yemen. For the first time, the internationally recognized Yemeni government is increasingly using them against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. And that could dramatically alter the balance of power in a war that has already devastated the country for more than a decade. The latest escalation began on July 13th, when Yemen bombed the runway at Sana'a International Airport to prevent an Iranian plane from landing. The rebels then retaliated by launching missiles at Saudi Arabia, whose coalition backs the Yemeni government. But the violence did not stop there. Later, Yemen's internationally recognized government accused the Houthis of launching another barrage of ballistic missiles, this time targeting the Red Sea port city of Al-Makka and residential areas in the central city of Marib. And now the stakes are getting even higher. With the Strait of Hormuz severely restricted amid the Iran-US conflict, while Iran-backed Houthis threaten to choke the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb, one question looms large: from where will the oil flow? On July 20th, the Houthis declared a blockade of Saudi ports and ships in the Bab el-Mandeb. The same day, clashes were reported between Houthi fighters and forces of Yemen's internationally recognized government in Hodeida. Then on July 23rd, the Houthis claimed responsibility for strikes on 2 Saudi tankers in the Red Sea, bringing the threat directly to one of the world's most critical maritime trade routes. So, what we are seeing is no longer just a battle for territory inside Yemen. The fight is increasingly spilling onto the region's most vital waterways, threatening shipping, energy supplies, and potentially the global oil market. And now the battle has slowly spread into the skies. The videos emerging from the government side tell their own story: drones tracking targets, dropping explosives, hitting fighters, armored vehicles, trenches, and military positions. For years, that kind of aerial warfare was largely associated with the Houthis. Now the government is trying to build its own drone capability. And here's why this matters. The Houthis have spent years developing and refining their drone arsenal. They have used unmanned aircraft not just for battlefield attacks, but also to strike targets far beyond Yemen's front lines. Their drone inventory includes systems such as the Qasef family and the longer-range Samad family, along with newer systems derived from Iranian designs. Houthis have benefited from Iranian technological assistance, while also gaining years of experience in modifying, operating, and adapting these weapons themselves. The Samad 3, for example, has been reported to have a range of around 1,500 kilometers and can carry an explosive payload. The Qasef family, meanwhile, has been used in one-way attacks and is similar to Iran-designed Ababel-T drones. In other words, this isn't a brand new capability for the Houthis. They have had years to perfect it. And that is precisely why the government's new drone campaign is significant. It may not have the same range or sophistication, but it doesn't necessarily need to, because even relatively small, reusable drones can change what happens on a battlefield. Think about the advantage. A drone can observe a position from above. It can identify a fighter, vehicle, trench or mortar position. It can drop a munition, and if it survives, it can potentially return and be used again. The Yemeni government may not be able to match the Houthis' long-range strike capability, but reusable, remotely piloted drones could prove extremely useful for everyday battlefield operations. And there is another interesting element. The government has reportedly been adapting drones originally designed for civilian purposes, and that is where Yemen's drone war starts to resemble another major conflict on the other side of the world, Ukraine. In Ukraine, cheap drones have transformed modern warfare. Unmanned aircraft are now being used by small units for surveillance, targeting, and attacks on an enormous scale. Yemen is nowhere close to that level of drone warfare, but experts say some of the same dynamics are now beginning to appear. Small, relatively inexpensive drones are becoming ordinary battlefield tools rather than specialist weapons reserved for a few elite units. There are even signs of tactical innovations associated with the Ukraine war appearing in Yemen. According to a report, first-person view drones with fiber optic control are being used. Yemeni authorities have also reported intercepting components intended for fiber optic controlled one-way attack drones. So Yemen may now be entering what experts describe as a kind of Ukrainization of tactical drone warfare. Not because Yemen is copying Ukraine completely, but because the basic logic is similar. Cheap drones, constant surveillance, rapid targeting, and a battlefield where hiding becomes increasingly difficult. But there is a bigger question. Can these drones actually change the war? Because the Houthis still have the advantage in experience. They have been using drones as a core part of their asymmetric warfare strategy for years. 3 members of Yemen's Houthi movement, including field commanders, were reportedly killed in government drone strikes west of Taiz on Saturday. According to a Yemen news agency, government drones targeted vehicles believed to be linked to the Houthi group along the Maqbana front, an active military zone in the Maqbana district of Western Taiz Governorate. For years, Houthi media has used images of drone and missile strikes to project military strength. Now, government-aligned forces are trying to send a message of their own. That message is simple. You are no longer safe from above. And this could have a serious impact on Houthi fighters. If their movements can be monitored from the sky, commanders have to think twice before moving personnel or equipment. If trenches, vehicles, and firing positions can be identified by drones, even relatively small attacks can become more dangerous. And if these operations continue across multiple fronts, the psychological pressure could be just as important as the physical damage. The idea is not necessarily to defeat the Houthis overnight. It is to make every movement more expensive, every convoy more vulnerable, every battlefield position more exposed, and every commander more uncertain about what is watching from above. So Yemen now has 2 battles unfolding simultaneously, one on the ground and another in the sky. The Houthis still possess the more sophisticated overall drone capability. They have longer range systems, years of operational experience, and a much broader arsenal. But the Yemeni government is learning. It is adapting. It is experimenting with cheaper systems. And most importantly, it is beginning to use drones more consistently across multiple fronts. That could make Yemen's battlefield far more dangerous, because the old advantage of surprise is disappearing. A fighter who once needed to worry mainly about a sniper, artillery, or a missile strike may now also have to worry about a small drone hovering overhead. And that changes battlefield behavior. It changes movement. It changes concealment. It changes how military positions are built and defended. And ultimately, it changes how wars are fought. But there is one major catch. More drones do not automatically mean victory. Yemen's anti-Houthi camp remains divided among different armed formations, including government forces, the Giants Brigades, and Guardians of the Republic forces. The government has recently tried to create a more unified military decision-making structure, but turning drone capability into a coordinated military advantage is a much bigger challenge. The Houthis, meanwhile, have years of experience operating under pressure, and they have repeatedly demonstrated their ability to adapt. So the real test is not whether Yemen's government can launch drones. It is whether it can sustain the campaign, coordinate it, expand it, and use it effectively enough to actually alter the battlefield balance. Because if it can, Yemen's war could be entering a new phase. And perhaps the most striking part of this story is how quickly the nature of warfare is changing. A conflict that began more than a decade ago with battles for territory is increasingly becoming a contest of technology. The Houthis have their drones. Now the government is building its own aerial arsenal. Both sides are watching from above. Both sides are learning, and both sides are trying to make the other side pay for every move on the ground. Yemen's war may not have returned to the full-scale conflict of its earlier years just yet, but the warning signs are getting harder to ignore. The UN is already sounding the alarm. The front lines are heating up. The real question is, will Yemen's new drone war become the weapon that changes the balance, or the spark that pushes the country back into a much bigger conflict?